Greetings and salutations. I am your humble Adobe instructor, AJ Wood, and today we're talking Photoshop CS5. If you're a graphic designer or creative who's been using Photoshop for some time, then you're probably familiar with the levels and the curves command. Those are pretty standard items in Photoshop. We use them a lot. But if you're not a photographer, then you're probably missing out on the power that you have with Camera Raw. So I'm going to go ahead and open an image. And this is actually one of the sample images that came early on with Photoshop. So it might actually be in your sample images folder. And what I want you to see is this is an image that we could fix, and we might use the levels command on this. So if I just go image adjustment levels or do command or control L, I can bring up the levels dialog box, and the foreground's dark, so I could just adjust the gamma fader here, and notice I can bring the little girl back, but I do so at the expense of the background. So I'm sacrificing the beach and the sky in an effort to make the girl brighter. So the levels command works really well, but this is a very general command. It's making sweeping changes to the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows. So I'll cancel out of that, and probably in this instance, a better command to adjust the image would be curves. So that would be image adjustments and curves, or command or control M to bring up the curves dialog box. Now, curves would give us more control over the image, or the parts of the image that we change. So if I grab my adjustment slider control, I can actually drag in the image, and here I'm making the girl brighter, and then I can actually go in my histogram here, and I can bring the sky and the beach back. So if I toggle and uncheck and uncheck the preview, you can see that does a fairly good job of bringing the girl back, but she's a little gray. Okay, I've just kind of really ruined the contrast here in the foreground. So that doesn't really work the best either. So I'll go ahead and I'll hit cancel. We do have another adjustment in the image adjustments menu, one that's very popular, that's shadows and highlights. So if I ran shadows and highlights, this is actually one of the demo images that they use for that. And if I go ahead and grab shadows and highlights, I'll keep it simple. Here I can just adjust the shadow amount and brighten the shadow areas only. If I over exaggerate it, of course, it'd be too much, but you can see that actually brings back the foreground as well. So I have those commands in Photoshop, and I've used specifically the image adjustments menu to just kind of emphasize the point that, hey, those were all destructive commands. And certainly I could do things like layer masking and layer adjustments and really get really fancy with it, but I want to show you here that Camera Raw is actually a great way to make tonal changes like these on a regular basis. So if I close this image, I want you to see I'm going to flip over to Bridge. And if I simply right click, this is a JPEG, I can tell this JPEG to open up in Camera Raw. So I'll go ahead and do that, and it brings up the Camera Raw dialog box. Now, if you're going to play around in Camera Raw, my first suggestion for you is to go to the Snapshots tab and immediately make a snapshot of your image. And you can call this one Original, because this is going to give you a quick way at any point in time to revert back to the original image, even when you're finished working on it. So now I've got the original to compare, and I just need to select that. What I want to show you is the basic panel to actually work on this image. We have a lot of faders here, and again, if you're a photographer, you're already familiar with all this, but this is really for designers who've never experimented with Camera Raw. If we take a look at this image, we have adjustments that need to be made. Specifically, the foreground is dark. Well, you use shadow highlights inside of Photoshop. Here in Camera Raw, we simply have a fill light slider. And with that fill light slider, there is our girl. The foreground is now brighter. I can once again increase contrast by sliding this blacks fader. I have the ability to adjust the overall exposure to the image. Notice here in Camera Raw how much more control I have, and this is why I want to point this out. In a single dialog box, Camera Raw provides you with all of this power over this single image, one dialog box, and the best thing about it, I can come over here to the Snapshots tab, I can take a snapshot of my adjustment. Everything here is non-destructive. So I'll put here fixed image Go ahead and save that. I've got these two snapshots. I'm simply going to hit done. And if we look really close, I'll zoom in so you can see, this image now has a little icon that represents the fact that it's been edited in Camera Raw. And in fact, I can edit this at any time. When I go into Camera Raw again, notice my snapshots are still here. I can show you the original image. I can show you the fixed image. I can even take this from Camera Raw into Photoshop. So, Camera Raw is a great way to do tonal changes to your images, even if they're JPEGs. If you decide that you really like this route, if you decide you want to do this on a regular basis, you can edit your preferences in Photoshop. So if you're on a PC, you would go to Edit and Preferences. If you're on the Mac, you go Photoshop and Preferences, and you want to specifically go to Camera Raw. If you go Edit Preferences, Camera Raw, you can change a setting down at the bottom that says automatically open supported JPEGs and TIFFs. So if I do this and click OK, the next time I do File Open and I point to a supported JPEG image, it'll open directly in Camera Raw first. So this is a great workflow tip. My name's AJ Wood. As always, appreciate you being here. You guys have a great day.